Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Buccieri, the Director of Publicity at Copper Canyon Press, and I am coming to you live from Brooklyn. You are watching our new interview series, Line Break, which goes off the page and into the homes and minds of our beloved poets. I've always had the dream of seeing more poets, represented on screen, talking shop, answering questions, and kind of taking us behind the scenes of how they do what they do. And working with these poets at the press has truly inspired me and challenged me, and it's been a lot of fun. So in this series, I wanted to bring that spirit to you wherever you might be. So each season, we will be bringing you episodes from different Copper Canyon Press poets. And this episode, we are speaking with Sarah Ruhl. Sarah, thank you so much for being here. How's your day going?
For having me. My day
Yeah.
is going just fine.
Well, good. I
And
like.
all the better to be talking about poetry with you.
I love that. I know. It's my saving grace.
Yeah.
So I'd love if actually you could just do a quick intro of yourself.
Sure.
So if you could just say maybe your name, pronouns, where you live, most recent book you've published.
Yeah. So my name is Sarah Ruhl. I live in Brooklyn most of the time. I most recently published 44 poems for you with Copper Canyon Press. And I go by she, her, hers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how how would you describe 44 poems for you in like a word or a sentence or a phrase? I love hearing how poets would describe their own work.
They're all poems of dedication and address,
Yeah.
which is why I called them 44 poems for you. I think the reader is the final person of address. And so I think of the poem as kind of a circle from me to a specific person in my life, usually, and then to the reader, and I suppose back to me in some way once the reader has read it.
I love that. Well, that was quite eloquent. Thank you. I like that. Um, so, we've all kind of read interviews, or at least I have, that kind of open with the question, where did you find your start, or what was your first job, or, so on and so forth. Um, but, when it comes to poetry, I'd kind of say that for me, at least, everything can be traced back to that first moment of inspiration, kind of that first moment of seeing oneself like represented in a phrase or a song or anything like that. So I kind of wanted to open with a similar but different kind of question. Can you maybe tell me about the first time you saw yourself represented, or the first time you kind of felt seen
Mm,
in a show, a film, a song, a poem, or kind of anything similar?
yep. I mean, I started writing poetry and short stories almost before I could write. My mother used to write down for me little poems and
Wow.
stories, and uh, a morbid child. I mean, I think when my grandma died, I wrote a poem about that that
What
rhymed.
age are we talking?
Like 6.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay.
Um, and but in terms of seeing myself in a poem, it's such an interesting question. I remember my father's favorite poets were E. E. Cummings and Dylan Thomas, and he used to read those out loud to me or give me the books, and I used to go through them, and I loved those poems, but I don't think I saw myself in those poems.
Mhm.
And I remember being in a bookstore in high school. I grew up in Illinois, so the bookstore was probably in Evanston, Illinois, and I remember coming across the poetry of Sharon Olds.
Mm.
And I remember the cover. It was like a naked figure, two naked figures. I think it's her book, The Living and the Dead.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and I remember seeing myself in those poems in a different way. And the way she writes about being a woman, embodiment, all of the all of the secretions,
Yeah.
all the fleshly, all the stuff that you're not going to see in a class, like in a Wordsworth poem.
Mhm.
Um, that was all there, and I think that gave me a different kind of idea about voice and what could be told in a poem.
Oh, wow. So around that same time, you'd already been writing, poetry, or at least having your mom transcribe poems for you. Like, so did that push you at all to write more did that get you more into poetry, or was it just, nice to be seen and nice to kind of read?
It did. It made me write differently, and it made me write, I think, more from the body.
Oh, interesting. Do you think that do you think that carries through to what you write today, or do you think that that was more your kind of intro, your foray into writing poetry?
I think it was a transition. It was a transition from childhood to adulthood in a way.
That's
Uh,
fair.
and in a way, taking stock of the body as part of what it means to grow up. And when you grow up inside a female body, uh, you have different ways of imagining the body. I mean, just for an example, I think I can recite to you my first poem that I wrote about my grandma's death. It's
Oh,
very
please.
rhymey. Let's see if I can remember it. Rhyme usually helps you remember things. It was like, grieve not when in the earth I'm laid, for though my face will doubtless fade, my heart with you will always be. And in heaven we will meet one day. Remember in a joyous rush all our memories green and lush from being locked inside our hearts for the time we were apart.
Oh
So
my God. You
it's
had
very
lush in a poem?
I think it was lush. So it's very rhymey, very, disembodied, very Christian,
Hmm.
you know.
I
Um,
mean, yeah, go ahead.
anyway, was raised Catholic.
Me too. And I feel like you said something about imagining the body. And I feel like that was never something that I felt to like inclined to do, like I felt was even something to do, like
Mhm.
imagining the body. It was just to me the body was just sort of something that happened. It was
Mhm.
just kind of there, and so I feel like imagining the body, imagining like the how it grows, how it can transition, how like all these different things it's capable of is something that uh I've never thought of before. And I feel like the Catholicness of it, like for me, when you say the body, and I automatically think the body of Christ, like I
So
automatically
so
think,
screwed up.
yeah, this like stagnant thing that's just being like given to us. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I don't know.
Well, and in a way, imagining the body is such an odd phrase because we shouldn't have to imagine the body. The body is, as you said, just sort of given to us and we are in it. And maybe I was a little dissociated from that. I was sick a lot as a kid. And so maybe writing from the body too, maybe imagining the body is the first step before you can write from the body.
Oh, wow. Did you, were you aware as a kid that being sick was something different, that other kids weren't sick? Yeah.
Yeah, I was out of school a lot. I was probably out of school for about a month a year.
Oh, wow.
A-
Okay.
And now I know I mean, this is kind of not on topic, but you can always edit it out. Now I know it's probably because I had celiac disease,
Oh,
which is an autoimmune thing that
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't know about then.
Oh, wow. Autoimmunes are the worst. I also have an autoimmune condition, and it's just like it's doctor's way of saying we don't know why.
Yeah,
It happens. It's
idiopathic.
right, exactly. Exactly. I know. I'm learning that doctors are more of just that I take their opinion with a grain of salt, in my opinion. Anyway, I'm gonna take it back to writing. Not that medicalness isn't poetry in and of itself, but so I'm curious. So you wrote from age 6 on. You're still writing. Now obviously you're writing poetry. Was there a moment, or could you take me back to that moment, if there was one, where you thought like, hey, maybe I'm a poet? Like, did you have that kind of aha moment, or was poetry just kind of something you kept coming back to?
Well, I always wanted to be a writer from a very young age. And I never chose a genre. I mean, I kept changing them, and I continue to go back and forth. But from a pretty young age, I wanted to be a writer of some kind. And I think poetry presented itself most immediately to me. And then I started writing plays, which was more of a surprise in a way, although my mom's an actress and I went to the theater all the time as a kid. And then essays started coming, and then more poems started coming. So it seems like I tack like a little sailboat through different genres depending on, where I am in my life.
Is there like a ping that goes off when you know which genre some type of feeling or idea is supposed to go into, or do you write them in all the different ways and then you figure it out?
I always know which genre, and
Wonderful.
yeah,
I
is it
love that.
is it a ping? I don't know. I don't know if it's a ping. I don't know the sound of it, of knowing what genre it's supposed to go in. But I do think, like, I've been writing a lot of haiku during the quarantine,
Mm-hmm.
and the thought, it's such a compressed form. It really only has room for one or two thoughts in it. Um, so you kind of know, oh, that's a haiku and not
Mm-hmm.
not anything else, because it's maybe one thought that leads to a second thought, and that's about it.
I wonder, is there was there a moment you thought, maybe a different way of asking my second question was, was there a moment you thought, hey, maybe I could do this professionally, like writing professionally?
I always wanted to do it professionally.
You always want to be a writer, and you always want to. I love that. I love this one track. I love it.
So boring, but
That's not boring. That's
uh,
lovely.
I never thought I'd make a living doing it.
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
never
Fair
crossed my
enough.
mind. I mean, I thought maybe I'd be a teacher and
Okay.
I'd write some poems. And it was sort of Paula Vogel, my teacher at Brown, who's a playwright, who made me realize I could make a living writing plays. And that was a curious thought. I mean, that had really never occurred to me. Um,
How did they make you realize it?
I mean,
You-
Paula literally, she had her grad students over to her beautiful house in Cape Cod.
oh,
And she sat us on the deck and we looked out at the ocean, and she said, listen, this is what playwriting can buy. Look at this view.
my
I was
You were
like,
like,
oh my
yes.
God, it can give you a view of the water. Who knew? Like and I think for a lot of people, meeting a living writer, whether it's a poet or a playwright,
Mhm.
make actually making their living do sometimes moment, because you might always know you wanted to write, but because books kind of come without bodies, into your life,
Yeah.
it doesn't occur to you that you can walk around and eat and go to the grocery store and make this artifact. Or at least it didn't occur to me before meeting a living writer in that way and becoming close with her.
No, I think that's fair. And that's like half the reason why I wanted to do this, just to, I think it is important to realize the poet behind all the poems.
Right. Was
Uh,
there a person for you who kind of said,
I mean, that's a good question. I feel like for me, re- it wasn't realizing that I could necessarily make a living as a writer, one, because I'm not doing that, but to make a living as like working in publishing, I didn't think, like, that didn't ever occur to me before I went to grad school. I didn't even really know, like, all the different facets of publishing. You see the writer, you see the editor, you see the teacher. And those are the kind of three main things that you see. And then kind of when I went to grad school, I had Mark Bibbins as a teacher and John Freeman as a teacher. And, they kind of opened me up to, hey, like, there are all of these different, you could be a publicist, you could work at a book, distribution, you could work, in so many different facets of the industry. And I think that was really eye-opening, because I was like, wow, I can be around what I love, and buy groceries with that. And like, I think that's crazy.
it is crazy. I mean, I remember telling a young friend who loves to read that there are jobs, you can get, why is my thing doing that? That there are jobs you can get where all you do is read. And she was like,
Mhm.
what? There's jobs that you can read and that's your job? I was like, really? Yeah, there are. I mean, and I think there's probably only one or two poets who actually make their living writing poems. I mean,
Mm.
most poets are teachers or do some
Right.
other thing. And I actually, it's something I also love about the genre, that there's a kind of purity about that. When I think about Lewis Hyde's book, The Gift, and when he talks about poets being inside a gift economy, I kind of love that a poet doesn't kind of sit down and think, I have an idea that I'm going to pitch that's going to make me millions of dollars. I mean, there's none of that show business.
Right.
Um, that nothing like that intervenes. You just have
Right.
a thought and you write a poem down. That's it.
I feel like that's like the poetry community is almost what I was drawn to before even poetry. And like just the beauty that's found within the poetry community, within poets, within, indie publishers, within just like all, like I was so like, wow, like these are the people I want to be surrounded by. Like there's such beauty in these people. And so even before the art form, I yeah, I see that. So
Well, when I was in graduate school, I went to Brown for playwriting, and luckily at Brown, you're in the it's a literary kind of department, so you're with other poets. So I spent most of my time eavesdropping on what the poets were saying.
oh my God, what were they saying?
Well, just, or I would watch them.
Yeah.
I would watch how they would pick up a glass or what color their walls were.
Mhm.
This poet Tracy Grinnell, who was there, and Mark Tardy, and
Mhm.
wonderful poets who became friends. So even then, I loved writing plays, but there was a part of me peering at what the other poets were doing.
Oh, I love that. Um, I guess I think we have time for like one more question. So I'm gonna go for it. Let's see. I'm trying to think. I guess I'm kind of curious about this as a poet, as a playwright, as just a writer in general. You're publishing these books that are out there, away from you. You've let them go. The public can buy them and read them. You're subject to complete strangers basically reading and drawing conclusions about your work. So
Mhm.
I'm curious, like, have any conclusions or kind of generalizations about your work surprised you, or was there any type of, yeah, I guess, has any type of review or, yeah, just conclusion kind of been like, wow, I didn't know I wrote that, or I didn't see it that way.
I'm pretty careful not to read writing about my writing because it makes
That's
me not
fair.
want to write the next thing. So I'm kind of like a horse with blinders on as far as that goes. Um,
I think that's fair.
I was reading this little book, a little beautiful book. I have it here. I'll show it to you. You have it.
Yeah, let's see it.
The Clothing of Books.
No, I do not have this.
It's a wonderful little group of essays or a speech that Lahiri was giving, and it talks about a book as text, being this personal thing. Again, it sort of goes back to what we're saying about embodiment. And then the book acquires clothing, like a
Oh,
cover, and then it's walking the world, and the pride of that, but also the alienation of that. And I do think um, I mean, in the theater, there's a live quality where what people think about my work is pretty in my face, because I hear if they laugh or they don't laugh. I
God.
hear the quality of their attention. I hear if they applaud or don't. I hear all of that in the moment. Whereas with a book of poetry, I have no idea what readers are thinking unless they write to me. So sometimes I got a letter recently, and it went to my Yale mailbox, which I
Mhm.
never check. And
Yeah,
it was about my book with Max Ritvo, Letters from Max.
yeah.
And it was this beautiful letter, and I didn't get it until 2 years later. And I loved getting that letter and loved knowing what that reader was thinking. Um, So I really treasure I treasure those kinds of interactions with readers.
Yeah, I do too. Copper Canyon sends these little postcards in each book, and you can actually like send them back to the
Ah,
press. And we read those. In case anybody feels that we don't, we read
mm,
each one of those, and they're so beautiful. And we share them with the author usually, and they're
oh,
just cool to hear directly from the reader.
yeah.
Um, anyway, I could say a lot about that, but I won't. So I would love to close with maybe you reading a poem if possible.
Yep.
Um, Maybe reading a poem and maybe giving a shout out to a book that you've been reading that you've been loving and want to shine some light and love on. Is that possible?
Absolutely. It happens to be Copper Canyon. So it's the
What's the-
Essential Ruth Stone. I think it's the perfect book to read during quarantine.
Mm,
And the way she talks about poetry and how poems come to her
mm,
um, resonates with me deeply.
mm.
See if the font is very small, and I'm going blind in middle age.
The body.
What? I'm gonna turn the light on. Watch this.
Turn it on.
Exciting.
Get comfortable.
There we go.
It looks the same, but I'm glad it's different to you.
Okay. This poem by Ruth Stone is called Green Apples. In August, we carried the old horsehair mattress to the back porch and slept with our children in a row. The wind came up the mountain into the orchard, telling me something, saying something urgent. I was happy. The green apples fell on the sloping roof and rattled down. The wind was shaking me all night long, shaking me in my sleep, like a definition of love, saying, "This is the moment, here, now."
I love that. I actually read that poem instead of a prayer for our Thanksgiving meal. I read that poem.
Mm,
I just think it's so beautiful.
it really puts you right where you need to be, which is in the moment.
In the now. Yeah, exactly. Are we going to get to hear one from your book or no?
Yeah, why don't I read one from my book in progress?
Yes, I would love that.
Okay. Now I'm putting it on the screen. It's so strange. It's like on your face.
Technology.
Mhm. This is called What Are We Folding When We Are Folding Laundry in Quarantine? Standing 4 feet apart, you take one edge of the sheet, I take the other. We walk towards one another, creating order, like solemn campers folding a flag in the early morning light. But this is no flag. This is where we love and sleep. There was a time we forgot to do this, to fold with and toward one another, to make the edges clean together. My grandmother might have said, "There is always more laundry to do, and that is a blessing because it means you did more living, which means you get to do more cleaning." We forgot for a while that one large blanket is too difficult for one chin to hold and two hands to fold alone, that there is more beauty in the walking toward the fold and in the shared labor. And
Oh,
that's
Sarah, I love that. Like you've done more living and therefore you can do more cleaning. Oh, that's so good. I'm gonna think of it now. I can't do laundry ever again without thinking about
Oh,
that.
good. I mean, I have been doing a lot of laundry in
Me
quarantine,
too.
so I had to make sense of that labor.
Oh my gosh. Making sense of the labor. I love that. Oh man. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody for listening. Thank you to Sarah for being such a great guest. We will see you next time, and feel free to check out coppercanyonpress.org for the other episodes, more info about Sarah, about her books. And thank you. I hope you all stay well.